My brother Tony was the ultimate protector. When I was 10, some goons tried to snatch him. I ended up in their car instead. They got their ransom, but not before they'd carved up my face and broken both my legs. Tony went ballistic. He took over the family business, Dad's organization if you catch my drift, and built it into something huge. I became his world, his untouchable treasure. Someone laughed at my scars. Tony shoved his head into a trash bag full of rats, let them chew his face to a bloody mess. Some wise guy badmouthed my limp. Tony ran a freaking steamroller over his legs, turned M to hamburger. Tony was the boogeyman of the whole damn tri-state area. But he treated me like I was made of spun gold. He spent a fortune sending me overseas for reconstructive surgery, physical therapy, and a fancy college education. Right before graduation, I got a wedding invitation from Tony. He was all excited, said I was going to have a sister-in-law to spoil me rotten. He even sent a picture of the lucky lady. But the second I walked into the house, his fiancée, this ice queen named Brittany, busted in with a crew of muscleheads. She thought I was Tony's kept woman from overseas and decided to teach me a lesson. Tony showed up mid-beatdown. Brittany pointed at me lying on the floor and wailed, "Am I not good enough for you, Tony? Choose. Her or me." Tony's eyes went dark. "You got more lives than a cat." Bang. The patio door shattered, and a bunch of bruisers barged in looking like they were ready to start a war. I gasped, then recognized the woman leading them. Brittany, my soon-to-be sister-in-law from the photos Tony sent. Before I could even say hello, she swung a freaking baseball bat straight into my face. Pain exploded in my nose, and warm liquid trickled down. Blood. A sucker punch like that sent my head swimming. "There you are, you little gold digger. Thought you could hide out in Europe forever. Didn't think you'd ever come back to mooch off Tony's money." Brittany screamed. She raised the bat again, aiming for my head and body. I scrambled back, shielding my head, tripping over the rug, and landing on my butt. "You've got it all wrong." She shoved the bat in my mouth, twisted it. Pain ripped through my gums and teeth, and the taste of blood filled my throat. I choked and spat out a mouthful of red. "Wrong my ass. Don't think I don't know you conned Tony into buying you this mansion. You think I am stupid? You know I'm marrying Tony and you come back. Trying to steal him from me." She kicked me in the ribs, sending me sprawling. My head smacked against the edge of the coffee table, cracking it open. I was furious and terrified. Gulping down the blood, I blurted out, "You really have the wrong idea. I'm Tony's sister." "A sister?" Like a good little nun. But Brittany laughed sarcastically. One of her goons leaned in and whispered, "I did hear the boss had a sister out of the country, but nobody's ever seen her." Something about the accident. Brittany's sneer at my face. "Sister my ass." She doesn't look anything like Tony. Just then a woman walked in. Tony's right-hand woman. Frankie. She's been with Tony forever. She'd recognize me. "Frankie, help me." "It's me, Amy." Frankie did a double take. "Who the hell is this? How does she know me?" Frankie was hesitant, but before I could finish, Brittany smacked me hard across the mouth with the bat. Again, I clutched my bleeding mouth, unable to speak. Just a little tart who heard us talking, trying to get a leg up. Frankie shook her head. "No," she said, "she was Amy. Only family calls her that. This doesn't make sense." She hurried to me, grabbed my face, studying me hard. "Doesn't look like Tony's sister." My heart sank. This was my new face, the one she hadn't seen. Wait a minute. She got major surgery in Europe, didn't she? Changed her whole face. Frankie finally put it together. I nodded like a maniac, hoping desperately that she'd understand. "Yes, I'm his sister, Amy." Brittany waved her hand. "A surgery? Every chick who wants a meal ticket has that. Don't be gullible." Frankie held up a hand to stop her. "Faces can be fake. IDs can be fake. Let's find out who this really is." Two of Brittany's thugs grabbed me, ready to search me. I struggled, and she slapped me. "Hold still. You tie her up." They bound my hands. Since the accident, Tony never let anyone touch me, and he would have their hands hacked off if he saw this. Frankie was still cautious. Why beat her up this bad? What if she really is his sister? Brittany smiled weakly and offered her a cigarette. "Relax. We're getting married. He will forgive me for being protective." Frankie nodded, taking the cigarette. "True." They grabbed my wallet. Brittany snatched it open and laughed. "See? I knew it." Frankie peered over her shoulder and said, "Jennifer Smith." Then she flipped to my college ID. "Jennifer Smith, not Amy." My heart went ice cold. After the accident, Tony had my name and records changed, even moving the address of where I lived. He hadn't told anyone. I wasn't a Smith. I was supposed to be Amy Costello, and I was his baby sister. Frankie's eyes hardened. You tried to con us. Get her. They threw me on the floor, fists flying. My phone fell out of my pocket. When the screen lit up, Frankie saw my wallpaper. Her face changed in an instant.
Wait, it was a picture of two and me.
Frankie trembled as she picked it up. This your phone? I nodded so hard I thought my head would fall off. Brittany rolled her eyes. It's just a picture. She probably photoshopped it trying to fool us. I tried to show Frankie my texts. She unlocked my phone with my face, opening my text with Tony. Her contact name for Tony is Bro, Frankie exclaimed, shocked. Brittany grabbed my phone. Every tart calls the big guy bro to get in his wallet. Don't believe her. She scrolled again, and her face turned red with rage. He bought you a mansion. He calls you baby. He says he never wants to be apart from you. Like I said, a good little whore. But she doesn't know her place. Tony loved me since the attack. He never wanted me to go overseas again. Ever since, no one touched me. But here I was, being beaten by his fiancée, unable to call for help. My heart broke and I sobbed and Frankie frowned. She's got the princess thing down. Let's double check. Maybe he's nuts about his sister. If this is her, we're screwed. Brittany agreed. Fine. I'll call him. If she is Tony's sister, fine. But if she ain't, her face went ugly. She's gonna regret the day she was born. She ordered her goons to gag me and called Tony. Hey, babe. You said your sister was coming for the wedding. What day is she flying in? I want to get her a present, so I can welcome her. Tony answered. She's flying in tomorrow night. A chill ran down my spine. I changed my flight to surprise Tony. And I was here now. Brittany glared at me. If she hung up, it was over. I bit down on my gag as hard as I could. The goon yelped and let go. Tony, help me. I screamed at the top of my lungs. Brittany's face went white. She kicked me, putting her heel on my mouth. That's just the TV, my love. Amy comes tomorrow night. The phone went dead, and I felt hope fade. Her heel ground into my mouth harder and harder. Bitch trying to screw me. I almost believed you. Her eyes met mine, filled with jealousy. He already decided to marry me, but he still bought you a house. I will make you hurt. She pulled back her leg. The boss always takes care of his women. Since he likes her, let's let her live. You'll be his wife, and he'll pay her money. Frankie agreed. You can be the boss, and he will have some fun. I wanted to curse them. How could they think Tony and I would ever have something beyond a brother and sister? I hated Brittany for thinking that she was everything Tony always warned me about. Once I saw him, I would make him call off the wedding. Brittany saw the rage in my eyes and exploded. You want to mess with me? I will make you hurt. She grabbed a knife and slashed my face.
No.
I screamed in pain, but Brittany didn't stop. When you're ugly, Tony will only love me. Each cut was like being stabbed in the gut. It took 3 years of surgery to make my face right again. And she was going to ruin it. You're dead. I whispered and Brittany laughed.
Screw you, bitch.
She sliced my lips and I felt them split open. Brittany pulled back the knife. She stepped back and I heard a voice. Boss, what are you doing here? It was Tony. Tony was here. I struggled to get up, but my legs gave out. Brittany kicked me in the knees with the iron bar, and my legs failed. Frankie panicked, telling her to hide me. If he sees you, he'll kill you. Brittany and the goons dragged me to the kitchen. No sooner had they shut the sliding door than Tony walked in. I told you to get the house fixed up. Where is everything? I just got here. The stuff's in the car. Frankie rushed out to unload the car, and Tony looked around. Yeah, he likes the place. Is this the kitchen? Tony asked the designer and grabbed the door. I saw his outline through the glass and tears burst out.
Tony, you have to save me.
You. He slowly opened the door. His face changed when he saw Brittany and me. He opened the door slowly. His face changed when he saw Marina and me. For a moment, time seemed to freeze. Marina, still holding the knife, her face twisted in a mix of fury and satisfaction. Me, on the floor, my face covered in blood, feeling the cuts burn like fire, my legs useless after the hit with the iron bar. Tony's eyes darkened. What the fuck is this? His voice was low, almost a whisper, but so full of rage that it sent a chill down my spine. Marina immediately dropped the knife as if it burned her and raised her hands in a gesture of false innocence. Tony, baby, this isn't what it looks like. But Tony didn't even glance at her. His eyes were locked on me. I could barely speak. My mouth was swollen, my lips split, my throat filled with blood. I tried to say his name, but all that came out was a weak, broken sound. Frankie and the other thugs stood frozen, unsure whether to run or stay and watch hell unfold. Tony moved forward slowly, each step echoing in the silent kitchen. He knelt beside me, his fingers trembling as he touched my face. Amy? I barely nodded because any movement sent a wave of searing pain through my entire body. Tony closed his eyes for a moment, as if trying to hold something back. When he opened them again, there was no more doubt, only fury. He stood up abruptly, and without warning, his fist crashed into Marina's face. She fell to the floor with a strangled cry, clutching her now bloody mouth. Tony, I don't understand. That bitch tried to fool you. Fool me? Tony's voice was almost gentle, but I knew what that meant. It was the same voice he used before unloading an entire clip into the face of the man who kidnapped me when I was 10. Marina scrambled backward, trying to put distance between them. She said she was your sister, but she didn't look like you. We couldn't take any risks. Tony ran a hand through his hair, taking a deep breath like he was trying to keep himself in check. And that justified this? He asked, tilting his head toward me. Frankie, who had been silent until now, took a hesitant step forward. Boss, we made a mistake. She changed her face after the accident. We didn't know. You didn't know? Tony let out a hollow laugh. So, because you didn't recognize my sister, you decided to beat her half to death? Tony, please, Marina whimpered, tears spilling from her eyes. Shut up, he said, his voice sharp as a blade. Marina sobbed, but no one moved to help her. Frankie looked down. Everyone in the room knew they were screwed. Tony bent down again, lifting me in his arms with more care than I thought possible. My body screamed in protest, and I let out a weak, pained sound. You're gonna be okay, Amy, he murmured, his voice soft, completely at odds with the fury in his eyes. But I wasn't okay. I had never been more broken in my life. Tony gently placed me in a chair. Then he straightened up, scanning the room. Close the door, he ordered. One of his men rushed to obey. Marina started crying harder. Tony, no. Please. But he didn't even flinch. His gaze turned to Frankie. Who else do I need to bury today? Frankie raised her hands, stepping back. Boss, we messed up. Messed up? Tony's voice turned even colder. And what would have happened if I hadn't shown up? Frankie didn't answer. Tony looked back at Marina. You love me, don't you? You wanted to protect me? She nodded frantically. Yes. I just wanted to make sure no one took advantage of you. Tony tilted his head, as if considering her words. Then tell me, Marina. His voice dropped to a whisper. How should I protect myself from you? Marina's sobs turned into desperate screams. Tony, please, I love you. We're getting married. Tony smiled, but his smile was empty. No, we're not. And without hesitation, he pulled out his gun. Marina screamed, but her cry was cut off by the gunshot. Blood splattered against the wall, the floor, my shoes. Her body crumpled to the ground like a broken doll. Frankie and the others turned pale. Does anyone else have something to explain? Tony asked, wiping his blood-stained hands with a napkin. No one spoke. Good. Then he turned to me. Let's go home, Amy. I wanted to tell him that home didn't exist anymore. That everything I had been through had broken me in ways he couldn't fix. But I didn't have the strength to speak. Tony carried me in his arms and walked out of the house, leaving behind the chaos, the blood, the past. I closed my eyes and let the pain consume me. Tony carried me out of the house, and the world around me seemed to spin. The pain in my face throbbed, my legs were useless, and the metallic taste of blood in my mouth was almost unbearable. But none of that compared to what I felt inside. Rage. Betrayal. Hatred. He placed me in the back seat of the car as carefully as possible, as if I were made of glass. But I wasn't fragile anymore. Not after this. You're going to be okay, Amy, he said, his voice rough, almost like a promise. But how could I be okay? My own sister-in-law had nearly destroyed me, and the only reason I was still breathing was because Tony had arrived in time. What if he had been 5 minutes late? I would have just been another mistake to cover up. Frankie and the thugs stayed behind. I didn't need to ask what Tony would do with them. Anyone who betrayed his trust never got a second chance. The car sped off, and I rested my head against the window, feeling the cuts burn even more. "They're going to pay," Tony said after several minutes of silence. I laughed, but my mouth ached. "They already have. Marina has been exposed." Marina was just the beginning. I looked at him, feeling my heartbeat quicken. "What else are you going to do?" Tony didn't answer immediately. His fingers gripped the steering wheel, his eyes fixed on the road. "Do you want justice, Amy?" "I wanted something bigger. I want everyone who knew about this to suffer." My voice came out cold. Tony smirked. "Then you're going to love what I have planned." I should have felt guilty. Any normal person would. But I wasn't a normal person anymore. The following weeks were a blur of recovery and revenge. Tony put me in the best hospital in the city, with top-tier doctors and nurses taking care of me 24/7. But he didn't sit around waiting. While I was stuck in bed, everyone involved in my attack started to feel the consequences. Marina's thugs? Fired from every job even remotely connected to Tony's organization. None of them could find work anywhere in the city. Anyone who tried to help them received a clear message: if you protect a traitor, you pay for it. Frankie tried to flee the city, but Tony caught her first. I never touched her. Frankie screamed when Tony placed her in front of me. I was still in a wheelchair, but my expression was nothing but pure disdain. "But you watched." My voice was low, but filled with contempt.
And you doubted me.
Tony stood still, waiting for my decision. "What do we do with her?" he asked. I looked at Frankie, seeing the fear in her eyes. She knew she had no way out. "I'm not a monster, Frankie," I said. "But you knew what they were doing to me. And you stayed silent." She opened her mouth to beg, but Tony motioned with his head. "You're out. No one will ever trust you again. You'll never work in this city again." She turned to Tony, desperate. "You can't take everything from me." Tony leaned in slightly. "You took everything from my sister. I'd say this is fair." Frankie left, but not before hearing my final words. I hope it was worth it. Days passed, and news of what Marina had done spread. We didn't need to do anything but let her deal with the consequences. Her reputation was ruined. The wedding was officially canceled, and everyone knew why. She tried to fix things, claimed it was all a misunderstanding, but no one wanted to be associated with someone who had attacked the wrong person. And then, when I was finally strong enough to leave the hospital, Tony made sure to give me something special. "This is yours," he said, handing me an envelope. I opened it and saw the ownership papers for the mansion. My name was on the document. "But you spent years away, Amy. You lost so much. This house, this money, it's not a gift. It's what was always yours." I sighed, holding the document. Tony would never let anyone take anything from me again. And when I finally returned to that house, I found no more ghosts. Marina was gone. The traitors had fallen. And me? I was stronger than ever. No one really knows how much of what Tony said was true. All I know is that none of the people involved that night were ever seen again. No trace of Marina, Frankie, or the thugs who hurt me. It was as if they had vanished into thin air. I asked Tony multiple times what had happened. He never gave me a clear answer. He would just give me that cold, unreadable look and say, "You don't need to know. You just need to know that you're safe now." I was supposed to feel relieved, right? To know that they would never have the chance to hurt me again. But it unsettled me. It felt like a part of my own story had been erased without my control. And Tony became even more protective after that night. At first, I understood. He had almost lost me. Of course, he would be on edge. But what started as concern quickly became suffocating. I couldn't go anywhere without him knowing. There were always bodyguards following me, even when I told him I didn't need them. I couldn't take a taxi alone, travel without his approval, or even go shopping without one of his men lurking nearby like a shadow. I tried to ignore it. I told myself he was just looking out for me. But over time, I realized it was more than that. It was control. And the worst part? It extended to who I let into my life. If I started dating someone, Tony would dig into their entire background, where they lived, who they worked with, if they had any past issues. If he didn't like what he found, and he never liked what he found, those men simply disappeared from my life. At first, I thought it was coincidence. Then I realized the truth. Tony was pushing them away. "You deserve better, Amy. They weren't good enough for you." And who decides that? I do. That was the moment I understood. No matter how much time passed, to Tony, I would never stop being his untouchable sister, the little girl he needed to protect from the world. But I wasn't a little girl anymore. I had recovered. I was walking again. My face no longer looked the same, and all I wanted was one thing: to live. But Tony couldn't accept that. And that's when I realized there was no place for me in the life he was trying to build for me. If I wanted freedom, I had to take it for myself. And so I did. It took me months to plan everything. I couldn't just walk away and expect him to accept it. I had to be strategic. So little by little, I started pulling away. I made friends outside his circle, saved money in an account he couldn't track, and when the day came, I left. No messages, no calls, no traces. I simply disappeared. I took a flight to a place where Tony had no influence over my life. For the first few days, he tried to find me. He called endlessly, sent messages, even showed up at my old house. But I wasn't there. He sent his men to track me down, but this time, I was ready. I hid in places he couldn't reach me. And for the first time in his life, Tony had to accept that I was gone. I never hated him. Deep down, I knew he believed he was protecting me. But what he never understood was that protecting me didn't mean locking me up. I just wanted to be free. And now, finally, I was.
My boyfriend told his friends that I'm possessive and jealous because I saw him flirting with other women and said I didn't like it. I used to think love meant accepting everything about someone, even when it made you uncomfortable. Looking back now, I realize how naive that sounds. But at 23, I genuinely believed that questioning your boyfriend's behavior meant you were being unreasonable. It started at my friend's birthday party in downtown Portland. I was wearing this new black dress I'd saved up for, feeling confident for once. My boyfriend had been dating me for 8 months, and I thought we were solid. He was charming, popular with everyone, and had this way of making me feel special when it was just the two of us. But something shifted that night. While I was getting drinks, I saw him leaning against the bar, talking to this blonde woman in a way that made my stomach turn. He was using that voice. You know the one. Lower, more intimate, the same tone he used with me when we were alone. His hand kept brushing her arm, and when she laughed, he moved closer. I walked over with his beer, trying to stay calm. "Hey, who's your friend?" I asked, forcing a smile. He barely glanced at me. "Oh, this is my girlfriend," he said to the woman, like I was some afterthought, not even using my name. The woman looked embarrassed and excused herself quickly. "That seemed pretty flirty," I said once we were alone. He rolled his eyes dramatically. "Here we go again. Can't I have a normal conversation with another human being?" It didn't look like just conversation to me. "You're being paranoid," he said, loud enough that his friends nearby could hear. "She's getting possessive again, guys." His friend laughed. "Dude, you better watch out. Next, she'll be checking your phone." I felt my face burn with humiliation. The way they talked about me like I wasn't standing right there, like my concerns were some kind of joke. But what hurt most was how he just stood there smiling, enjoying their validation of his behavior while dismissing mine. The rest of the night, I noticed things I'd been ignoring before. How he'd disappear for long stretches, always returning with stories about networking or catching up with old friends. How women seemed to know him better than I expected. How he'd position himself with his back to me when talking to them, like he was creating a private bubble that excluded me. When I tried to bring it up on the drive home, he sighed heavily. "Look, I love you, but this jealousy thing is getting old. I can't walk on eggshells every time I talk to another person." "I'm not jealous," I protested. "I just think there's a difference between being friendly and being flirty." "To you? Maybe. But normal people can tell the difference between appropriate social interaction and something inappropriate. Maybe you should work on that." The way he said normal people cut deep, like I was defective somehow, like my instincts were wrong. I spent the whole drive home questioning myself, wondering if I really was being unreasonable. Maybe I was reading too much into innocent interactions. Maybe I was the problem. That night, I lay awake replaying every moment, trying to convince myself I'd overreacted. He was sleeping peacefully beside me, and I felt guilty for even doubting him. He'd never actually done anything wrong, right? It was just conversation, just being social. But deep down, something felt off. The dismissive way he'd treated my concerns, the public humiliation, the automatic assumption that I was wrong. It all sat wrong with me. Still, I pushed those feelings down, telling myself this was what mature relationships required: compromise, understanding, trust. If only I'd known then what I know now about the difference between trust and willful blindness. 2 weeks later, he suggested we go to his coworker's housewarming party. I was hesitant after what happened last time, but he seemed excited to introduce me to his work friends, so I agreed. I spent an hour getting ready, choosing a casual but cute outfit that would make a good first impression. The party was in full swing when we arrived at this modern house in the suburbs. His co-workers were friendly enough, mostly young professionals like us. Everything seemed normal at first. We mingled, I met his colleagues, and he seemed proud to have me there. Then the music got louder and people started dancing. I was talking to his colleague's wife about her job when I noticed him on the makeshift dance floor. He was dancing with this petite brunette from his marketing department, and it wasn't just dancing. His hands were on her waist, pulling her close, their faces inches apart as they moved to the beat. I excused myself and walked over. "Mind if I cut in?" I asked, trying to keep my voice light. The woman stepped back immediately, but he groaned. "Come on, we're just dancing. Don't be that girlfriend." That girlfriend? The phrase stung. I watched as several people turned to look at us, drawn by the tension in his voice. You know what I mean. The controlling type who can't handle their boyfriend having fun. His friend appeared beside us with a drink. "What's the drama about?" "She's upset that I was dancing," he said, shaking his head like I was being completely unreasonable. "Seriously? It's just dancing, man," his friend said to me directly. "You can't expect him to stand in the corner all night." I felt trapped. How could I explain that it wasn't about dancing, but about the way he was dancing? About boundaries and respect? Standing there with everyone watching, I felt like the crazy girlfriend they were all whispering about. "Fine," I said, stepping back. "Dance away." But it got worse. Over the next hour, I watched him work the room like he was single. He got 3 different phone numbers from women at the party, right in front of me. When one woman asked if he was available, he actually paused before saying, "It's complicated," while glancing at me. The breaking point came when we were leaving. A woman from the party, the same brunette he'd been dancing with, approached our car. "Hey, you never gave me your number," she said, completely ignoring that I was standing right there. Without hesitation, he rattled off his phone number while I stood frozen in disbelief. She programmed it into her phone and texted him immediately. "There, now you have mine too," she said with a flirty smile before walking away. I waited until we were in the car before I exploded. "Are you kidding me? You just gave out your number right in front of me?" "Relax, it's networking. She works in digital marketing. She might have opportunities for me." At 11 at night? In a parking lot? That's not networking. That's you collecting phone numbers from women you want to sleep with. He started the engine and pulled out without looking at me. This is exactly what I'm talking about. You turn everything innocent into something dirty. Maybe the problem isn't me. Maybe it's your own insecurity talking. My insecurity? I couldn't believe what I was hearing. Any normal girlfriend would be upset about this. No, they wouldn't. Most women are confident enough in themselves and their relationships that they don't need to police their boyfriend's every interaction. The ride home was silent, but I could feel him getting angrier. When we got to my apartment, instead of walking me up like usual, he stayed in the car. "I need some space to think about whether this relationship is working," he said through the rolled-down window. I stood on the sidewalk watching him drive away, feeling like I'd been punched in the gut. Somehow, I was the villain in this story. I was the unreasonable one. I was the problem that needed fixing. That night, I called my sister, crying. "Am I crazy?" I asked her. "Is it normal for your boyfriend to dance with other women and give out his number?" "Hell no," she said immediately. "That's not normal at all. You know that, right?" He didn't call for 3 days after our fight. 3 days of me checking my phone obsessively, wondering if I'd overreacted, if I'd pushed him away for good. When he finally texted, it was like nothing had happened. "Missing you. Let's go to Jake's party Friday. I'll pick you up at 8. No apology, no acknowledgement of our fight, just an assumption that everything was fine. I should have said no. I should have demanded we talk first. Instead, I spent Friday afternoon getting ready, choosing a dress I knew he liked, hoping we could get back to how things used to be. The party was at his friend's house near the university, a big, crowded affair with people spilling out into the backyard. I felt nervous the moment we walked in, but he seemed relaxed, greeting everyone like he hadn't a care in the world. For the first hour, things seemed almost normal. We stayed together, talking to mutual friends, sharing drinks. I started to relax, thinking maybe we'd moved past our issues. Maybe I had been overreacting. Then I saw her across the room, his ex-girlfriend from college, the one he'd dated for 2 years before me. She was tall, confident, everything I sometimes felt I wasn't. She spotted him at the same time and started walking over with this smile that made my stomach drop. "Oh my God, look what the cat dragged in," she said, completely ignoring me. "Hey, stranger," he replied, and I could hear something in his voice change. "You look amazing." I stood there like a piece of furniture as they caught up. her hand touching his arm every few seconds, both of them laughing at inside jokes I wasn't part of. When she suggested they grab drinks together, I finally spoke up. "I'll come with you," I said. "Actually, we're good," his ex said. "We have some catching up to do." He shrugged apologetically at me. "Just give us a few minutes, okay?" A few minutes turned into 20, then 30. I found myself alone at this party, watching from across the room as my boyfriend got increasingly cozy with his ex. His friends were watching too, some of them smirking, others looking uncomfortable for me. When I finally walked over to reclaim my boyfriend, I found them on the back porch, very close together on a small outdoor couch. Too close. "Hey," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. "Can we talk for a minute?" "We're in the middle of something," his ex said without even looking at me. "Yeah, it's kind of a private conversation," he added. The dismissal was so casual, so public, that I felt my face burn with humiliation. Several people had followed me outside and were now witnessing this entire exchange. "I'm your girlfriend," I said quietly. "And I'm talking to an old friend," he replied. "Don't be weird about it." That word, weird, echoed in my head as I walked back inside. I found myself in the bathroom, staring at my reflection, wondering how I'd become the weird girlfriend, the problem girlfriend, the one who couldn't handle normal social situations. When I came back outside 20 minutes later, I couldn't find them anywhere. Someone pointed toward the side yard, and that's when I saw them. He had her pressed against a tree, kissing her like his life depended on it while she ran her fingers through his hair. The worst part wasn't just seeing it. The worst part was hearing the laughter. His friends had their phones out, filming, making jokes about how I was about to lose my mind. They were treating my humiliation like entertainment. I stood there frozen for what felt like hours but was probably only seconds. Then I turned and walked straight out of that party. I didn't say goodbye to anyone, I didn't cause a scene, I just left. By the time I got home, my phone was buzzing with notifications. He'd posted on Instagram. Sometimes you just gotta do what feels right, with a picture of him and his ex from earlier in the evening, before the kissing. He'd tagged all his friends, including the ones who'd been filming. The comments were already rolling in. "Dude, your girlfriend is gonna kill you. Worth it though. Freedom looks good on you." I turned off my phone and cried myself to sleep, realizing that what I'd just witnessed wasn't a moment of weakness or confusion. It was planned. It was deliberate. It was designed to humiliate me in front of people who already thought I was the problem. I woke up to silence. No texts, no calls, no frantic apologies. It was almost worse than if he'd been blowing up my phone. The quiet felt like confirmation that what happened meant nothing to him, that I meant nothing to him. Around noon, my sister called. "I saw the post," she said gently. "Are you okay?" "He kissed his ex-girlfriend in front of everyone and posted about it online," I said, my voice coming out flat and emotionless. "So no, I'm not okay." "That's not okay. That's never okay. You know that, right?" Before I could answer, I heard banging on my apartment door. Loud, persistent, aggressive banging. "I have to go," I told my sister. Through the peephole, I could see him swaying slightly, still in the same clothes from last night. He looked drunk, or hungover, or both. "Open up," he called out. "We need to talk." I opened the door, but kept the chain lock on. "What do you want?" "Let me in. I can explain everything." "Explain what?" "I saw you making out with your ex while your friends filmed it for entertainment." He leaned against the doorframe. "You're being dramatic. It wasn't like that." "Then what was it like?" "Look, she kissed me." "Okay." "I was drunk, and she caught me off guard. You know how she is, always causing drama." The blame shifting was so immediate, so automatic, that it actually made me laugh. "So this is her fault?" "I'm not saying it's her fault, but you know how you get when you drink. You get all clingy and possessive, and it drives people away. She was just being normal, being friendly, and you made it weird by sulking all night." I stared at him through the crack in the door. "I made it weird? Come on, baby, you always forgive me. That's what I love about you. You understand that people make mistakes." The casual assumption in his voice, that forgiveness was guaranteed, that this was just another bump in the road, made my blood boil. "Not this time," I said, and started to close the door. He shoved his foot in the gap. "Don't be like this. You know I love you more than her. She doesn't mean anything." "If she doesn't mean anything, why did you kiss her?" Because you've been so difficult lately. So suspicious and jealous about everything. A guy needs to feel appreciated, you know? Desired. And lately, all I get from you is criticism and accusations." I couldn't believe what I was hearing. Somehow this was my fault for not appreciating him enough. My fault for having boundaries. My fault for expecting basic respect. Get away from my door, I said. Look, I'm sorry you're upset, okay? But you have to understand. When you act like this, it pushes me toward other people. If you were more trusting, more supportive, this never would have happened. I slammed the door shut and turned the deadbolt. He kept knocking and calling my name for another 10 minutes before finally leaving. That afternoon, I got a text from my friend who'd been at the party. Girl, you need to see this. She sent me a screenshot of a group chat with his friends. Messages from earlier that morning. Dude, did you see her face when she caught you? Priceless. She just stood there like a deer in headlights. Bro, you really showed her who's boss. Bet she'll think twice before giving you attitude again. And then his response. She'll get over it. She always does. Sometimes you gotta remind them what they could lose, you know? The casual cruelty of it, the calculated nature of what he'd done, hit me like a physical blow. This wasn't a mistake or a moment of weakness. This was a lesson, a punishment for daring to question his behavior. I screenshotted the messages and saved them. Something told me I might need them later. That evening, he showed up again, this time with flowers from the grocery store and what looked like a hastily written apology note. I didn't even go to the door this time. I watched through the window as he left both on my doorstep and walked away, already pulling out his phone, probably to complain to his friends about how unreasonable I was being. The note said, "Sorry you got the wrong idea about last night. You know I love you. Stop being stubborn and call me." Even his apology blamed me for misunderstanding, rather than acknowledging what he'd actually done. I crumpled it up and threw it away, along with the flowers. I didn't respond to any of his attempts to contact me. Not the flowers, not the note, not the 17 text messages that followed over the next 2 days. For the first time in our relationship, I went completely silent, and I could feel him starting to panic. The texts started normal enough. "Hey, can we talk?" And, "I miss you." But by day 3, they were getting frantic. "This silent treatment is really immature. At least tell me you're okay. I'm starting to worry something happened to you. Your sister says you're fine, but won't talk to me. This is ridiculous." By day 4, he was calling multiple times a day, leaving voicemails that swung between apologetic and angry. I listened to them all but never responded. Look, I get that you're upset, but this is getting out of hand. People make mistakes. Grown-ups talk about their problems instead of playing games. Then, later that same day, "I can't eat, I can't sleep. I love you. Please just call me back." And then, just an hour later, "You know what? Fine. If this is how you want to handle things, maybe we aren't as compatible as I thought." The whiplash between desperation and manipulation was almost fascinating to watch from the outside. I started screenshotting everything, creating a digital record of his unraveling. On day 5, he showed up at my apartment again, but this time he seemed different, less confident. He'd clearly been drinking, but there was something desperate in his eyes that I'd never seen before. "I know you're in there," he called through the door. "Your car is here and I can see the light on." I stayed quiet. This is insane. We've been together for 8 months. You can't just disappear because of one stupid mistake. Still nothing from me. Fine. You want to know the truth? Yes, I kissed her. But it didn't mean anything. It was just proving a point. Now I was listening. "You've been so paranoid lately. So convinced I was going to cheat on you. And my friends were laughing about how whipped I was. How I couldn't even talk to another woman without you getting upset. So when she was there and she was flirting with me, I wanted to show everyone that I'm still my own person." The honesty was startling, and somehow made it worse. He'd humiliated me to prove a point to his friends about his independence. My feelings, my dignity, were just collateral damage in his quest to look cool. "It wasn't about her," he continued. "It was about not letting you control me. But I see now that it was stupid. It was childish. I'm sorry." For a moment, I almost opened the door. The apology sounded sincere, different from his usual deflections. But then I remembered the group chat messages, the casual cruelty of his friends' comments and his participation in them. "I know you're listening," he said, his voice getting harder. "And I know you're enjoying this, making me grovel, making me chase after you. Well, congratulations, you win. Are you happy now?" The shift back to blame was so quick it gave me whiplash. Even in his apology, he couldn't help but make me the villain. "You know what the funny thing is?" he continued, and I could hear him sitting down against my door. "Everyone told me you were too good for me when we started dating. Your friends, your sister, even my mom. They said you deserved better. But I defended you. I told them they didn't understand how special you were. Now he was rewriting history, painting himself as my defender against people who actually cared about me. But they were right, weren't they? You are too good for me. Too perfect. Too pure to understand that sometimes people mess up. Too rigid to forgive the person who loves you. The manipulation was so transparent I almost laughed. Somehow, being a good person was now a character flaw he was using against me. I heard him stand up and walk away, but not before leaving one final voicemail. I hope you're proud of yourself. You're throwing away the best thing that ever happened to you because of your pride. But don't come crawling back when you realize what you lost. That night, I got a text from an unknown number. Girl, he's at the bar crying into his beer telling everyone who'll listen that you're crazy and broke his heart. Thought you should know. Ashley from the party. I smiled for the first time in days. Let him tell everyone I was crazy. I was finally starting to feel sane. I thought I was safe at work. The marketing firm where I worked was downtown, a world away from his usual haunts. And I'd never brought him there except for one office Christmas party. But on Tuesday morning, exactly a week after the party incident, my coworker appeared at my desk with a concerned expression. There's some guy at reception asking for you, she said quietly. Says he's your boyfriend and it's an emergency. My stomach dropped. What does he look like? Tall, brown hair, looks like he hasn't slept much. He seems pretty agitated. I could have pretended I wasn't there, could have had security remove him, but I knew he'd just keep coming back. Better to deal with this head-on in public, where he couldn't completely lose control. I found him in the lobby, pacing by the elevators in yesterday's clothes. He looked terrible, unshaven, eyes red-rimmed, that manic energy of someone who'd been running on coffee and desperation for days. We need to talk, he said the moment he saw me. You can't just show up at my workplace. This is completely inappropriate. Inappropriate? You've been ignoring me for a week. I had to do something to get your attention. Several people in the lobby were staring now, including the receptionist and a couple of my coworkers getting coffee. I felt my professional reputation crumbling in real time. Fine, I said through gritted teeth. 5 minutes. Outside. We walked to the small park across the street, where at least we wouldn't be making a scene in front of my colleagues. He immediately launched into what sounded like a prepared speech. I've been thinking about everything that happened, and I realize I made some mistakes. I should have been more considerate of your feelings. Some mistakes? I couldn't believe the understatement. You publicly humiliated me and posted about it online. I know, but you have to understand. I was getting a lot of pressure from my friends. They kept saying you were changing me, making me boring, and I guess I wanted to prove them wrong. There it was again. Everyone else's fault but his own. So you decided to prove them wrong by cheating on me in front of everyone? I didn't cheat. It was just a kiss, and it didn't mean anything. I was drunk and stupid, and I'm sorry you misunderstood what happened. Misunderstood? My voice was getting louder. I misunderstood watching my boyfriend make out with his ex while his friends filmed it? Okay, maybe misunderstood is the wrong word. But you're blowing this way out of proportion. People kiss their exes at parties sometimes. It doesn't mean anything. The casual dismissal of my feelings, the complete lack of understanding about why this was wrong, it crystallized something for me. This wasn't going to get better. He wasn't going to suddenly develop empathy or respect for boundaries. We're done, I said simply. What do you mean, done? I mean this relationship is over. I'm breaking up with you. For a moment, he just stared at me like I'd spoken a foreign language. Then his expression shifted from confusion to anger. You can't be serious. Over one stupid kiss? It's not about the kiss. It's about the lying, the disrespect, the public humiliation, and the complete lack of accountability. It's about you showing up at my job like a stalker because I won't answer your calls. Stalker? I'm your boyfriend trying to save our relationship. Ex-boyfriend, I corrected. As of right now. He grabbed my arm, not hard enough to hurt, but firmly enough to stop me from walking away. You don't mean that. You're upset and you're not thinking clearly. I looked down at his hand on my arm, then back at his face. Let go of me. Something in my voice must have gotten through because he dropped his hand immediately. Look, he said, switching tactics again. I know you're hurt, but throwing away 8 months because of one bad night is crazy. We're good together. We love each other. You love having someone who accepts your bad behavior without consequences. That's not love. I'm trying to apologize here. No, you're trying to make me believe that what I saw wasn't that bad, that my reaction is unreasonable, and that I should be grateful you're willing to forgive me for being upset. That's not an apology. I started walking back toward my office building. He followed. So that's it? You're just going to throw us away? I'm not throwing anything away. You already did that when you decided your friend's approval was more important than my feelings. Fine, he called after me. But don't come crawling back when you realize what a huge mistake you're making. I kept walking without turning around. As I got back to the elevator, I could see him through the glass doors, still standing on the sidewalk, pulling out his phone, probably calling his friends to tell them how unreasonable I was being. Let him. I was done caring what he or his friends thought of me. 2 days after our confrontation at my office, my mom called me at work, which she never did unless it was an emergency. Honey, I just got the strangest call from that boy you've been dating. My blood went cold. He called you? He sounded very upset. He said you two had a fight and you won't talk to him. He asked if I could help mediate because he loves you so much and doesn't understand what he did wrong. I closed my office door and sat down heavily. Mom, please tell me you didn't get involved in this. Well, I told him that relationship problems should be worked out between the two people involved, but he seemed so sincere. He said he made a small mistake and you're overreacting because you have trust issues. Trust issues? The phrase felt like a slap. What else did he say? He mentioned that you've been very controlling lately, not letting him have friends or go out. He said he's worried about your mental state. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. He was systematically rewriting our entire relationship, painting me as the unstable one while positioning himself as the concerned boyfriend, trying to help his difficult girlfriend. Mom, that's not what happened at all. Then what did happen? Because he made it sound like you've been having some kind of breakdown. I found myself in the impossible position of having to defend my sanity to my own mother. I told her about the party, about the public humiliation, about the group chat messages. But even as I explained, I could hear how it sounded, like a jealous girlfriend overreacting to normal social behavior. Are you sure you didn't misinterpret what you saw? My mom asked gently. Sometimes when we're feeling insecure in a relationship, we can read too much into innocent situations. The fact that he'd managed to plant doubt in my mother's mind about my own perceptions was both infuriating and impressive in its manipulation. That evening, my aunt called, then my cousin. By the end of the week, I realized he'd contacted half my family with variations of the same story. I was the unstable girlfriend having a breakdown over imagined slights. He was the devoted boyfriend trying to get help for his struggling partner. The stories were consistent enough to sound credible, but varied enough to seem spontaneous. To my aunt, I was having anxiety issues that were making me paranoid. To my cousin, I was depressed and pushing away everyone who cared about me. To my grandmother, I was going through a difficult time at work and taking it out on my relationship. Each family member who called started with the same tone, gentle concern mixed with confusion about why I wouldn't just talk to this sweet young man who obviously loved me so much. He even offered to pay for couples therapy, my aunt told me. That shows real commitment. The masterstroke came when his mother called me directly. I'd met her twice during our relationship. She'd seemed nice enough, if a little protective of her son. Her voice was warm and motherly when she spoke. Sweetheart, I hope you don't mind me calling. I'm just so worried about both of you. His mother, I appreciate the concern, but this is really between your son and me. I know, but he's been beside himself with worry. He tells me you're going through a rough patch and he's trying so hard to be supportive, but you won't let him help. It was the same script, delivered with maternal concern. But then she added something new. He showed me some of the messages you've been sending him. Honey, some of them are quite harsh. I'm worried you might be dealing with some anger issues. Messages? What messages? The ones where you're calling him names, accusing him of terrible things. He's been showing them to me because he's so confused about where this is all coming from. I felt my world tilt. I haven't sent him any messages. I haven't contacted him at all. There was a pause. Oh, well, maybe I misunderstood. But sweetie, he really does love you. Can't you find it in your heart to forgive whatever small thing he did wrong? After I hung up, I sat staring at my phone, trying to process what had just happened. He was showing people fake messages, claiming I was harassing him while simultaneously claiming I wasn't talking to him at all. The lies were so elaborate, so coordinated, that I almost admired the effort. But the scariest part was how effective it was. My own family was starting to question my judgment, my mental state, my version of events. He was systematically isolating me by turning my support system against me, making everyone believe I was the problem that needed fixing. That night, my sister called with news that made my stomach sink. He contacted Dad, she said without preamble. Oh God, what did he say? He told Dad that you're having some kind of breakdown and he's concerned you might hurt yourself. He asked Dad to do an intervention. I dropped my phone. My father showed up at my apartment the next evening unannounced. something he'd never done in the 4 years I'd lived there. I could see the worry etched on his face as I opened the door. "Dad, what are you doing here? Can I come in? We need to talk." I made us coffee while he sat awkwardly on my couch, clearly struggling with how to begin a conversation he'd never expected to have. "Your boyfriend called me yesterday," he finally said. "He's very concerned about you." "Ex-boyfriend," I corrected automatically. "He said you're going through some kind of crisis, that you've been sending him threatening messages, and he's worried you might do something drastic." I set down my coffee cup harder than necessary. "Dad, that's not true. I haven't contacted him at all." "Then why would he say that?" It was a fair question, and I realized I needed to show rather than tell. I pulled out my phone and scrolled to our message thread, showing him the complete absence of outgoing messages from me. "Look at the dates," I said. "The last message I sent was over a week ago, before everything happened." My father studied my phone, his expression gradually changing from concern to confusion. "But he was so specific. He said you'd been calling him names, making accusations." "Dad, I need to show you something." I pulled up the screenshots I'd saved from the group chat, from his social media posts, from all his attempts to contact me. I walked my father through the entire timeline: the party, the public humiliation, the aftermath. As I talked, I watched my father's face transform from worry to understanding to anger. By the time I finished, his jaw was clenched in that way that meant he was furious but trying to stay calm. "That son of a bitch," he said quietly. "Excuse my language, but that's exactly what he is. He's been telling everyone I'm having a breakdown, that I'm the problem. He's been manipulating my own family to pressure me into getting back together with him." My father was quiet for a long moment, processing everything. "I'm calling your mother right now. She needs to hear the truth." He already talked to her, and my aunt, and probably everyone else. "Then we'll talk to them too. All of them. Nobody manipulates my daughter and gets away with it." That night turned into a family conference call that I'd never wanted but desperately needed. My parents, my sister, my aunt, and my cousin all got on the line while I explained what had really happened. I shared the screenshots, the timeline, the evidence of his coordinated campaign to discredit me. The silence when I finished was deafening. "I can't believe we fell for it," my mother said, her voice small with shame. "He was so convincing." "That's what manipulators do," my sister said. "They're good at making lies sound believable." "What I want to know," my father said, his voice tight with anger, "is what kind of person puts this much effort into destroying someone's reputation just because they got dumped." "The kind who can't handle being told no," I replied. The next day, my father did something I'd never seen him do before. He called my ex-boyfriend directly. "I understand you've been spreading lies about my daughter," he said when my ex answered. I was sitting right there, listening on speaker. "Sir, I think there's been some misunderstanding. I'm just worried about her mental state." "Cut the crap," my father interrupted. "I've seen the evidence. I know what you did at that party, and I know you've been lying to our family about my daughter's behavior." There was silence on the other end. "If you contact anyone in our family again," my father continued, "if you show up at her workplace again, if you continue this harassment campaign, I will file a police report for stalking. Are we clear?" "I'm not stalking anyone. I'm just trying to—" "Are we clear?" "Yes, sir." "Good. And son? If I were you, I'd start thinking about how to repair the damage you've done to my daughter's reputation, because I'm not going to let this slide." After my father hung up, I felt something I hadn't experienced in weeks. Relief. For the first time since this whole nightmare began, someone with authority had taken my side completely and unequivocally. But my relief was short-lived. That evening, I got a call from his mother. "I just spoke with my son about his conversation with your father," she said, her voice much colder than it had been before. "He told me what really happened at that party." "Oh?" "He admits he made a mistake, but he says you completely overreacted. He says your father threatened him and that your whole family is ganging up on him for one small error in judgment. Even with all the evidence, even after being caught in multiple lies, he was still playing the victim, and his mother was still believing him. Ma'am, your son has been lying to you and to my family for weeks." "My son doesn't lie to me," she said firmly. "Maybe you should look at your own behavior before you start pointing fingers at others." The call ended with her hanging up on me, but I wasn't surprised. I was starting to understand that some people would believe his version no matter what evidence they were shown. What mattered was that my family finally knew the truth. After my father's phone call, I expected him to back off, to finally leave me alone. Instead, the harassment escalated in ways that made me realize how dangerous his desperation had become. It started with the drive-bys. I'd look out my apartment window and see his car parked across the street at odd hours. Sometimes early morning before work, sometimes late at night when I was getting ready for bed. When I'd look again an hour later, he'd be gone. But the message was clear. He was watching me. Then he started showing up at places I frequented. The coffee shop where I got my morning latte suddenly became his new hangout spot. The grocery store where I did my weekly shopping somehow became part of his routine. The gym where I worked out after work was now where he coincidentally decided to get back in shape. Each encounter followed the same script. He'd act surprised to see me, make casual conversation like we were old friends who'd simply drifted apart, and then work in some comment about how he'd been reflecting on our relationship and realized he wanted to make things right. "I've been going to therapy," he told me at the grocery store, blocking my path with his cart, "working on my communication issues. I think you'd be proud of the progress I'm making." "That's great," I said, trying to maneuver around him. "I hope that helps you in your future relationships. Don't you want to know what I'm learning about myself?" "Not really." "The therapist says that couples who work through major conflicts often come out stronger than before. She thinks what we went through could actually be good for us if we handle it right." I doubted he was actually in therapy, but even if he was, I wasn't interested in being his practice partner for healthier behavior. "I need to finish shopping," I said firmly. "Of course. But hey, maybe we could grab coffee sometime, just as friends. I'd love to show you how much I've changed." The casual way he said, "just as friends," like our entire history could be reset with a simple label change, showed me he still didn't understand the fundamental problem. But the worst incident happened when he showed up at my parents' house on a Sunday afternoon. I was there for our weekly family dinner when the doorbell rang. My father answered the door, and I could hear the tension in his voice immediately. "What are you doing here?" "I just wanted to apologize to your family for any confusion I may have caused," came the reply. "I brought flowers for your wife and wanted to clear the air." My mother appeared in the kitchen doorway looking uncertain. My father's voice carried clearly through the house. "You need to leave, now." "Sir, I understand you're protective of your daughter, but I think if we could just sit down and talk man to man, you'd see that I really do love her." I said, "Leave. I'm not trying to cause trouble. I just want the chance to explain my side of things. I know she's told you her version, but there are always two sides to every story." That phrase, "her version," like the truth was subjective. Like my account of what happened was just one possible interpretation of events. I heard my father's footsteps moving toward the door, and his voice got harder. "Get off my property. Please, just 5 minutes. I know I made mistakes, but doesn't 8 months together count for something?" "You made mistakes?" My father's voice was incredulous. "You humiliated my daughter in public, lied to her family, and have been stalking her for weeks. Those aren't mistakes. That's a pattern of abusive behavior." "Abusive?" The word came out high and indignant. "I never laid a hand on her. I never called her names. I never even raised my voice. How is that abusive?" "Because abuse isn't just physical," my father said. "It's manipulation. It's lies. It's making someone question their own sanity. It's showing up at their workplace and their family's home when you've been told to stay away." There was a long silence. Then, "I think you've been poisoned against me by your daughter's version of events, but I forgive you for that. When she comes to her senses and realizes what she threw away, I'll be waiting." I heard the door slam, and my father's heavy footsteps coming back toward the kitchen. "That boy is not right in the head," he said when he found me standing in the doorway. "I know. The way he talks about you like you're an object he owns, like your feelings don't matter. It's not normal." That night, my father helped me document everything. We made a timeline of all his attempts to contact me, all the places he'd shown up, all the lies he'd told my family. We took photos of the texts, the social media posts, the evidence of his harassment campaign. "If this continues," my father said, "we're filing a restraining order." I nodded, but part of me wondered if a piece of paper would really stop someone who seemed to believe that persistence would eventually wear down my resistance. As if reading my thoughts, my father added, "And if a restraining order doesn't work, we'll figure out what will." The protective anger in his voice should have made me feel safer. Instead, it made me realize just how serious the situation had become. The breaking point came 3 weeks later when he showed up at my office again, this time with an elaborate bouquet and what looked like a handwritten letter. Security called me down to the lobby, where he was pacing nervously in his best suit. "I know what you're thinking," he said before I could speak, "but I'm not here to cause problems. I'm here to do this right." He got down on one knee in the middle of the lobby, pulling out a ring box while several of my coworkers stopped to stare. "I love you," he said loud enough for everyone to hear. I know I've made mistakes, but I want to spend the rest of my life making it up to you. Will you marry me? The absolute audacity of it, proposing after weeks of harassment in front of my colleagues, as if public pressure would force me to say yes, was so outrageous I almost laughed. Get up, I said quietly. Not until you answer me. The answer is no. It was no 8 months ago when we were happy. It's no now, and it will be no forever. Get up and leave. His face went through several expressions: confusion, embarrassment, anger, and finally a cold determination that made my skin crawl. Fine, he said, standing up and putting the ring away. But you're making the biggest mistake of your life. That night, I made a decision. The restraining order paperwork was ready to file, but I realized I needed something more powerful than a legal document. I needed him to reveal his true nature in a way that couldn't be explained away or minimized. I spent the next week studying his patterns, his psychology, his weaknesses. After 8 months together, I knew exactly what buttons to push. He was narcissistic enough that he couldn't resist explaining himself when he thought he had the upper hand. He was arrogant enough to confess to things when he believed there would be no consequences. Most importantly, he was still operating under the assumption that I was weak, that I would eventually break down and take him back if he just kept applying pressure. I was about to show him how wrong he was about me. I crafted the text message carefully. I've been thinking about everything that's happened. Maybe we should talk, really talk, about what went wrong. Are you free Saturday afternoon? We could meet at the park where we had our first date. I sent it on a Thursday evening, knowing he'd be at the bar with his friends, probably complaining about me to anyone who would listen. The response came back within minutes. Yes, thank you for finally being reasonable. I knew you'd come around eventually. I love you so much. The eagerness in his response, the immediate assumption that I was coming around rather than that he needed to make amends, told me everything I needed to know about his mindset. I spent Friday preparing. I borrowed a small recording device from my cousin who worked in journalism, tested it multiple times to make sure the audio quality was clear. I researched the legal requirements for recording conversations in our state. One-party consent, which meant as long as I was part of the conversation, I could record it without his knowledge. I practiced staying calm, keeping my voice level, asking the right questions to get him to reveal the full scope of what he'd done. I knew his ego wouldn't let him resist bragging once he thought he'd won me back. Saturday morning, I woke up with a strange sense of calm. For weeks, I'd felt powerless, reactive, constantly on the defensive against his lies and manipulation. Today, I was taking control of the narrative. I dressed carefully, nice enough that he'd think I was making an effort, casual enough that he wouldn't suspect anything unusual. I tucked the recording device into my purse, tested it one more time, and headed to the park. He was already there when I arrived, sitting on the same bench where he'd first told me he loved me 6 months earlier. He'd dressed up too, and had brought another bouquet of flowers. The sight of him trying to recreate our early romantic moments while ignoring everything he'd put me through since then was almost surreal. You look beautiful, he said, standing up as I approached. Thank you. He handed me the flowers with a nervous smile. I wasn't sure you'd actually show up. I said I would. I know, but after everything... He trailed off, clearly unsure how to reference his own behavior without admitting fault. I sat down on the bench, deliberately choosing the spot farthest from him. So, you wanted to talk. I did. I do. He sat down, leaving space between us, but close enough that his knee was almost touching mine. I want to start by saying, I'm sorry. It wasn't the first apology I'd heard from him, but I needed more than surface-level remorse. Sorry for what, specifically? The recording device in my purse was capturing every word. He shifted uncomfortably at my direct question, clearly expecting a more emotional reunion and less of an interrogation. I'm sorry for hurting your feelings at the party, he said carefully. I didn't think about how it would look to you. How it would look. I kept my voice neutral, curious rather than accusatory. What do you mean? Well, you know how you get when you see me talking to other women. I should have been more sensitive to your tendencies. Even in his apology, he was blaming my tendencies rather than his actions. But I needed him to be more specific. Can you walk me through what actually happened that night? I want to understand your perspective. His face lit up, clearly interpreting my request as a sign that I was ready to see things his way. Okay, so you remember how you were being kind of clingy that night? Following me around, getting upset every time I talked to someone? My friends were starting to notice. And honestly, it was embarrassing. Embarrassing how? They kept making jokes about how whipped I was. how I couldn't even have a conversation without checking with you first. And then when she showed up, your ex-girlfriend. Right. And she was being friendly. You know? Just normal catching up stuff. But you immediately got all paranoid and possessive. I nodded as if I understood. So, then what happened? Well, my friends were watching, and they started talking about how I'd let you completely control me. They said I needed to show you, and them, that I was still my own person. Show me how. He was getting more animated now, confident that I was finally listening to reason. The kiss was honestly just to prove a point. To show everyone that I wasn't going to be controlled by a jealous girlfriend. So it was planned? Not planned exactly. But my friends and I had been talking about it. About how you needed to learn that you couldn't dictate who I could and couldn't talk to. My heart was pounding, but I kept my expression neutral. He was confessing to deliberately humiliating me as a lesson. What did your friends say about it afterward? His grin was genuinely proud. They were impressed, actually. They said it was about time I put you in your place. And honestly, I thought it would help our relationship in the long run. I thought you'd realize you were being too controlling and we could start fresh. Did they record it? Oh yeah, they got the whole thing. Actually, he pulled out his phone. I still have the video if you want to see it. I watched in horrified fascination as he scrolled through his photos, completely oblivious to how damaging his words were. Here it is, he said, turning his phone toward me. The video was worse than I remembered. It showed me standing frozen in the background while he made out with his ex, his friends laughing and making crude comments about teaching me a lesson. But there was more footage I hadn't seen, clips of me walking away, looking devastated while they made jokes about my reaction. Jesus, I breathed, and it wasn't an act. I know it looks bad, he said quickly, misreading my reaction, but you have to understand the context. You'd been so possessive, so paranoid about me cheating. We were just trying to show you that your jealousy was pushing me toward exactly what you were afraid of. So this was my fault? Not fault exactly, but your behavior was creating the problem. If you'd been more trusting, more secure, none of this would have happened. I stared at him, marveling at his ability to twist reality. And afterward, when I wouldn't talk to you, that's when I realized how much damage your insecurity had done to our relationship. I tried everything to get through to you, but you'd built up these walls. Is that why you called my family? I was worried about you. You were acting so irrationally, cutting off all communication. I thought maybe they could help you see that you were throwing away something good over a misunderstanding. A misunderstanding? The way you interpreted what happened. I mean, yes, I kissed her. But it didn't mean anything. It was just to prove a point. And the lies you told my family? He looked confused. What lies? About me having a breakdown, sending you threatening messages, having mental health issues? I never said, okay, maybe I exaggerated some things, but I was genuinely concerned about your state of mind. The way you were acting wasn't normal. What about the fake messages you showed your mother? For the first time, he looked genuinely caught. Those weren't fake exactly. They were more like examples of the kind of things you might say if you were actually communicating. You fabricated text messages and showed them to your mother as evidence that I was harassing you. I was trying to help her understand why you were being so unreasonable. The recording device was capturing every word of his confession, every admission of manipulation and deceit. But I needed one more piece. And showing up at my work, at my parents' house, following me around town, I was trying to fix things. I love you, and I wasn't going to give up just because you were being stubborn, even after my father told you to stay away. Your father doesn't understand our relationship. He only heard your side of the story. So you decided to ignore what he said? I decided to fight for the woman I love, even if her family was trying to turn her against me. I sat back looking at this man who had systematically lied, manipulated, stalked, and gaslit me, and who still believed he was the hero of this story. I need to ask you something, I said quietly. Do you actually think you did nothing wrong? I think I made some mistakes in how I handled things, but my heart was in the right place. I love you, and everything I did was to try to save our relationship. Everything? Everything. I reached into my purse and turned off the recording device. I had everything I needed. I stood up from the bench, and his expression immediately shifted from confident to confused. Where are you going? I thought we were working things out. We're not, I said simply. I just wanted to hear you admit what you really did. What do you mean? I pulled the recording device from my purse and held it up. I mean, I wanted you to confess to deliberately humiliating me, lying to my family, fabricating evidence, and stalking me. And you just did. His face went white. You recorded me? Every word, including your admission that the kiss was planned to put me in my place, that you lied to my family about my mental health, and that you created fake text messages to support your lies. You can't. That's illegal. Actually, it's not. One-party consent state. I can record any conversation I'm part of. He stood up, his voice getting frantic. You tricked me. I gave you the opportunity to tell the truth. You chose to double down on your lies and manipulation instead. What are you going to do with that? I'm going to make sure everyone who heard your lies gets to hear the truth. His panic was almost fascinating to watch. The confident manipulator was completely gone, replaced by someone who clearly understood that his carefully constructed narrative was about to crumble. Please, he said, reaching for my arm. Don't do this. It will ruin everything. I stepped back, avoiding his touch. You already ruined everything. I'm just making sure people know who actually did the ruining. I'll tell everyone you manipulated me into saying those things, that you seduced me here under false pretenses. Go ahead. The recording speaks for itself. That evening, I sat at my kitchen table with my laptop and began the process of undoing all the damage he'd done. I created a detailed email explaining the entire situation, attached key excerpts from the recording, and sent it to every family member he'd contacted with his lies. The response was immediate and overwhelming. My mother called within an hour, crying with anger and apologization. My aunt sent a text saying she felt sick about believing him. My cousin offered to help me file charges. But the most satisfying response came from his mother. She called me directly, her voice shaking with what I could only describe as mortified rage. I owe you the biggest apology of my life, she said. I raised him better than this. I don't know what happened to the son I thought I knew, but what I heard on that recording, that's not the person I raised. Thank you for listening to it. I've already told him he's not welcome in my house until he gets serious help. Professional help. What he did to you, what he put your family through, it's unconscionable. 2 days later, I got a call from his best friend, one of the people who'd been at the party filming everything. I heard the recording, he said without preamble. I wanted you to know I'm disgusted with myself for being part of what happened. Okay. We deleted all the videos, everything. And I told the guys that if anyone ever mentions what happened at that party again, they'll answer to me. It wasn't enough to undo the damage, but it was something. The final confrontation came a week later when he showed up at my apartment one last time. But this time was different. His confidence was completely gone, replaced by desperate pleading. You've destroyed my life, he said through the door. My own mother won't talk to me. I lost 2 friendships. People at work are looking at me differently. Good, I said without opening the door. Please, can't we work something out? Some way to fix this? There's nothing to fix. This is just everyone finally seeing who you really are. I'll change. I'll get therapy. I'll do whatever you want. I don't want anything from you anymore. I want you to leave me alone. What if I can't do that? The threat in his voice was subtle, but unmistakable. I pulled out my phone and started recording again. Are you threatening me? There was a long silence, then the sound of footsteps walking away. I never saw him again after that day, but I heard through mutual acquaintances about the aftermath. He did eventually go to therapy, though whether it was genuine desire for change or damage control, I'll never know. He moved to a different city 6 months later, supposedly for a job opportunity, but more likely to escape his reputation. His ex-girlfriend, the one he'd kissed at the party, reached out to apologize. She'd been drunk and hadn't realized she was being used as a prop in his cruel lesson. She was horrified when she learned the full story. As for me, I learned something valuable about the difference between love and manipulation, between normal relationship conflicts and psychological abuse. I learned that trust isn't something you give blindly. It's something that's earned and maintained through consistent, respectful behavior. Most importantly, I learned that I was stronger than I'd ever imagined, strong enough to walk away from someone who claimed to love me but treated me like an enemy, strong enough to fight back against lies and manipulation, strong enough to demand the respect I deserved. My family still talks about that recording, about how proud they are that I stood up for myself. My father keeps threatening to play it at family gatherings as an example of how not to treat our daughter, which is embarrassing, but also kind of sweet. I'm dating someone new now, someone who understands that love means respect, that partners support each other instead of tearing each other down for sport, someone who would never dream of humiliating me to prove a point to his friends. Sometimes I wonder what would have happened if I'd just accepted his behavior, if I'd believed his gaslighting and stayed. But then I remember how it felt to finally expose the truth, to watch his house of lies collapse, to reclaim my own narrative. Some people might call what I did revenge. I prefer to think of it as justice. Sometimes the only way to stop a liar is to let them hang themselves with their own words.